Hello, crime fans. Andrew True Crime is with you. When Haley Anderson, a Binghamton University student, initially disappeared from her off-campus apartment, her close friend and roommate Josie Artin wasn't particularly alarmed. Artin told CBS News correspondent Maria Elena Salinas in an exclusive interview with 48 Hours that she didn't immediately think something terrible had happened. However, the next day, Artin became extremely concerned, especially when another roommate used the Find My Friends app to track Haley's phone to the apartment of Orlando Tercero, a fellow nursing student. Artin went to Orlando's apartment in search of her friend. When no one answered the door, she climbed through a window and discovered Haley's body. Orlando was nowhere to be found. Investigators soon located surveillance footage showing Orlando and Haley entering his apartment, and hours later, only him leaving with a suitcase. This raised questions about what had happened that night and why he had left. Artin expressed her thoughts. When I learned he was in Nicaragua before we could get to him, the first thing I thought was, no way, he got away with murder. It was early March 2018, and back in Haley's hometown of Westbury, New York, her mother, Karen Anderson, wasn't even aware that her 22-year-old daughter was missing. Karen explained that they didn't talk every day, as Haley had requested weekly Sunday calls. Karen described Haley as a fiercely independent millennial hippie with a free spirit. She was known for her unique style, personality, and her ability to trust and talk to everyone. Haley was a straight-A student at Binghamton University and had been accepted into their nursing program, which meant an extra year of school. As of March 2018, graduation was approaching, along with a nursing job back home. Karen was looking forward to having her daughter close again and was planning a big graduation party. Kevin Ocampo, Haley's on-again, off-again boyfriend and also a Binghamton student at the time, shared that Haley had always wanted to be a nurse, seeing it as an opportunity to help others. When asked by Maria Elena Salinas if he loved Haley and thought they might end up together, Kevin affirmed both questions. Despite her relationship with Kevin, Haley made it clear that she first needed to graduate and experience real freedom. Kevin shared that Haley always wanted to move to California, get a hippie van, travel, and work as a freelance nurse. While still at school, Haley wanted the freedom to date others. Orlando Tercero, born in Miami and raised in Nicaragua, was also in the nursing program. He came from a well-to-do family with his father being a physician, which likely inspired his drive to become a nurse. Jesse Bua, Orlando's roommate and close friend, described him as hardworking during weekdays and social on weekends, enjoying drinks, meeting friends, and dancing, similar to Haley in that sense. Haley and Orlando first met in class but didn't become friends until Haley's fourth year at school when they met again at a party in Kevin's off-campus apartment. Kevin, Haley, and Orlando grew closer, with Kevin even inviting Orlando to join his fraternity, partly due to their shared Hispanic backgrounds. The situation changed when Kevin and Haley took one of their breaks, and Orlando crossed a line in his friendship with Haley. Karen Anderson, Haley's mother, explained that while Haley and Orlando had some romantic encounters, Haley was clear from the beginning that she didn't want a committed relationship with him. Haley and Orlando then developed their own on-again, off-again relationship. Jesse described their interactions as sometimes bickering, sometimes laughing hysterically, and other times keeping their distance. However, Orlando's fraternity brothers pushed him out for sleeping with Haley as she was considered Kevin's girlfriend. Karen believed that Haley felt guilty about this situation. When asked if Orlando made Haley feel guilty, Karen confirmed that he did, mentioning that Orlando would say things like, "Oh, I want to kill myself." Despite this, Haley never completely turned her back on Orlando. Josie Artin, Haley's friend, reported that Orlando started showing up uninvited. He would often come to smoke a cigarette on their porch and was seen driving by frequently. When asked about Haley's reaction to these visits, Josie explained that she usually dealt with the situation for Haley, as it was difficult for Haley to tell her friend to leave. Josie would have to tell Orlando that his behavior was inappropriate and ask him to leave. Josie believed Orlando's actions were driven by jealousy, as he didn't want to see anyone else at their house. When asked if she thought Orlando was obsessed with Haley, Josie confirmed, stating that he was weirdly possessive of Haley, despite her not being his girlfriend. Jesse Bua, Orlando's friend, also noted that Orlando definitely liked Haley and seemed to want their relationship to be more than just an on-and-off fling. A significant red flag emerged when Haley posted a Snapchat video announcing that the tires on her car had been slashed. Sydney Matuzak, Haley's childhood friend, saw the post from a few hundred miles away and saved it. Sydney was shocked, wondering why anyone would do such a thing and how crazy someone would have to be to slash someone's tires. This incident occurred the day after a party at Orlando's apartment, where he learned that Haley and Kevin were back together. Kevin mentioned that he was the one who discovered Haley's slashed tires. This series of events painted a picture of escalating tension and concerning behavior surrounding Haley's relationships with Orlando and Kevin. Kevin had spent the night at Haley's place. The next morning as he was leaving, he noticed something was off about Haley's car. He immediately suspected Orlando had slashed her tires. Orlando denied the accusation and tried to blame Kevin. However, Karen Anderson, Haley's mother, was convinced it was Orlando. She urged Haley to file a police report. The police came and took down the information, but Haley refused to press charges because the damage exceeded $600, which would have been considered a felony and resulted in Orlando's expulsion from nursing school. For a while, Haley distanced herself from Orlando. However, despite warnings from family and friends, she eventually allowed him back into her life. Karen noted that while the tire slashing incident was a red flag for others, Haley continued to trust Orlando. Nearly 6 months after the tire incident, Haley went missing, even disappearing from Snapchat. Josie and another roommate, Michela Topali, tracked Haley's iPhone to Orlando's apartment. They climbed through a window to search for their friend. Inside the apartment, Michela discovered Haley first and screamed for Josie to call 911. When Josie entered Orlando's bedroom, she saw Haley, who appeared very pale. At the time, Josie wasn't certain if Haley was dead. It was later confirmed that Haley had been strangled to death, and Orlando Tercero was nowhere to be found. The story then shifts to the afternoon of March 9, 2018, when Karen Anderson noticed 2 men in a black car parked outside her house, setting the stage for the next part of the narrative. On March 9, 2018, Karen Anderson noticed 2 men in a black car outside her house. They approached her door and informed her that her daughter Haley had been found strangled to death in Orlando's bed. Karen was shocked and felt numb, regretting that she hadn't pushed harder for Orlando's arrest after the tire slashing incident. Binghamton Police Lieutenant Corey Minor led the search for Haley's suspected killer. The house where Orlando lived had several cameras which were used to track both Haley's and Orlando's movements on March 8 and 9. The first significant recording showed Haley and Orlando entering the residence early on March 8. After Haley entered the house, she was never seen again on camera. Orlando, however, was seen leaving the residence several times. Nearly 7 hours after arriving with Haley, Orlando was seen clearing the driveway of garbage and leaving alone. Police tracked his movements to a local pharmacy where he purchased sleeping aids, Zizquil and melatonin. Orlando then returned to his apartment. The cameras didn't pick him up for another 7 hours. When they did, he was seen walking towards the basement area. Investigators believe Orlando attempted to hang himself in his apartment using hooks from the basement but failed and hurt himself in the process. Detectives found blood on the floor and a tie hanging from a doorway. They also discovered a note written in Spanish which began with, "I'm really sorry about this. I never felt I could be capable of doing this." The note also included "Father, I'll see you soon," referring to his father who had passed away 5 years earlier. Investigators interpreted this note as both a killer's confession and a suicide note, further implicating Orlando in Haley's death. 16 hours before Haley's body was discovered, Orlando left his apartment for the last time with his luggage. He drove over 3 hours to New York's JFK International Airport and boarded a plane to Nicaragua with his head bandaged, possibly from his alleged suicide attempt. When Steve Cornwell, the Broome County District Attorney, learned Orlando had fled to Nicaragua, he feared Orlando might get away with murder due to his dual citizenship. It was now up to Nicaraguan authorities to capture the fugitive. A 48 hours team traveled to Managua, Nicaragua to retrace Orlando's steps. They learned that Orlando's mother picked him up at the airport and drove him about 3 hours north to their hometown of Chinandega. For several days, Orlando allegedly hid in the house where he grew up. Meanwhile, back in Binghamton, Cornwell was unsure if Nicaraguan authorities were even looking for Orlando, as there was no communication with the Nicaraguan government for those few days. 4 days after his arrival, Orlando's mother drove him an hour south to Leon for medical attention. According to the police report, Orlando was brought to a hospital with self-inflicted wounds, suggesting another suicide attempt. It's possible that someone at the hospital recognized Orlando, as the story had been in the news for days. The hospital is where police finally found and arrested him. The next day in Managua, police held a press conference, informing the world that Orlando Tercero was in custody and displaying him for all to see. At this point, Orlando had yet to be charged with a crime by Nicaraguan authorities. An international fight for justice was just beginning, with Cornwell wondering what steps to take next in this complex situation involving two countries and their legal systems. Less than a week after Orlando Tercero's arrest, Haley's family and friends gathered in her hometown in New York for her funeral. Karen Anderson, Haley's mother, recalled this period as a blur, unable to remember specific details of the funeral. 2 months later, on what would have been Haley's graduation day from Binghamton University, her family faced another emotional challenge. Karen described it as probably the saddest day, with Haley's picture placed on a chair at the ceremony. Haley's father, Gordon Anderson, accepted her diploma in her honor, hoping to feel a part of her as he did so. While Haley's family was grappling with their loss, efforts to extradite Orlando to the U.S. were in full swing. Broome County District Attorney Steve Cornwell was optimistic about the extradition and secured a second-degree murder indictment against Orlando. Karen Anderson expressed her desire to see Orlando face-to-face. However, the extradition process proved complicated due to Orlando's dual citizenship in the U.S. and Nicaragua. An existing treaty did not require either country to extradite its own citizens. The effort continued for a year and a half until September 2019, when Cornwell received a call from the Department of Justice. The DOJ informed Cornwell that while Nicaragua wouldn't extradite Orlando, they were willing to try him in Nicaragua. Cornwell was skeptical about the chances of getting a conviction in Nicaragua, describing it as a snowball's chance in hell. This development set the stage for an unconventional trial, with the case to be heard in Nicaragua rather than the United States, presenting new challenges and uncertainties for those seeking justice for Haley. In the United States, a grand jury had charged Orlando Tercero with second-degree murder. However, in Nicaragua, he would be charged with femicide, a crime that doesn't exist in the U.S. legal system. Femicide is specifically defined as the murder of a woman with whom the perpetrator had a relationship. While in Nicaragua, 48 Hours interviewed a group of Orlando's closest friends. Daniel Urcullo, described as Orlando's best friend, stated that he didn't believe Orlando was capable of killing someone. The friends portrayed Orlando as an excellent student with great prospects, kind, caring, and respectful. When asked about Orlando's relationship with Haley, Daniel believed Orlando was in love with her but denied that he was obsessed. He also stated that Orlando never mentioned being rejected by Haley. The friends expressed disbelief that the Orlando they knew could have killed Haley. They described him as someone who could always make others smile and was there for his friends when they were feeling down. An important difference in the legal proceedings was noted. Unlike in the U.S., Orlando was not required to enter a plea in Nicaragua. This development, along with the different charge and unfamiliar legal system, was causing Steve Cornwell, the Broome County District Attorney, to become increasingly nervous about the case's outcome. This situation highlighted the complexities of trying a case across different legal systems and cultures, setting the stage for an unusual and challenging trial process. Steve Cornwell, the Broome County District Attorney, was initially concerned about whether the trial in Nicaragua would be fair or just a show trial. However, a glimmer of hope appeared when Cornwell and his office were asked to assist the Nicaraguan prosecution team. They had only 8 days to prepare for the trial, with one of the biggest challenges being setting up a way to communicate. The Nicaraguan authorities agreed to use teleconferencing, allowing witnesses to testify from the Broome County DA's office to a courtroom in Managua. The entire trial would be conducted through this method, with a judge, not a jury, deciding Orlando's fate. The trial began on October 1, 2019, with Haley's mother, Karen Anderson, as the prosecution's first witness. Karen testified about Haley's problems with Orlando, including his persistent texting, following, and driving by her house. During her testimony, Karen got her first glimpse of Orlando on the screen, feeling sad about the lives he had ruined, and later becoming angry at his seemingly arrogant and bored demeanor. Other witnesses also testified. 1. Josie Arton, Haley's roommate, stated that Orlando had always been possessive over Haley. 2. Jesse Bua, Orlando's roommate, confirmed that Orlando and Haley had an on-and-off relationship for over a year. 3. Kevin Ocampo, Haley's ex-boyfriend, testified about the incident when Haley's tires were slashed, suspecting it was because he was seeing Haley again. This unusual trial setup, crossing international borders and legal systems, presented unique challenges and dynamics as the case against Orlando Tercero unfolded. Binghamton police investigator Carl Peters presented crucial evidence to the judge, including damning surveillance footage. He described video showing Orlando Tercero and a female entering the apartment around 4 o'clock, and later footage of Orlando coming and going alone. Peters also presented a handwritten note found in Orlando's apartment, which suggested remorse and implied jealousy as a motive. Dr. James Terzian, the pathologist who conducted Haley's autopsy, testified that the cause of death was asphyxiation by neck compression. District Attorney Steve Cornwell believed the evidence overwhelmingly showed that Orlando had choked Haley to death, possibly while she was sleeping, describing it as the act of a sick, disturbed man. However, Orlando's defense attorney was yet to present his case. He planned to argue that Orlando was temporarily insane at the time of the crime, which worried Haley's mother, Karen Anderson. The defense attorney, Eduardo Ruby, called only one witness, Dr. Ronald Lopez Aguilar, a court-appointed psychiatrist. Dr. Aguilar testified that Orlando claimed to have no recollection of the event, saying he woke up after heavy drinking to find Haley dead. However, the expert couldn't verify this claim or determine Orlando's state of mind at the time of the murder. He could only state that there was nothing wrong with Orlando's current mental state. Steve Cornwell dismissed the defense's argument as indefensible, stating there was no evidence of intoxication, drug use, or any disorder that could explain the murder. He firmly believed that Orlando remembered what happened. This part of the trial highlighted the contrasting strategies of the prosecution and defense, with the insanity plea becoming a key point of contention. After both sides presented their cases, Judge Fabiola Betancourt allowed Haley's family to have the last word, a practice uncommon in U.S. courts before a verdict. Karen Anderson, Haley's mother, gave an impact statement describing Haley's character and aspirations. Unexpectedly, the judge announced she would return with her verdict after a brief recess, surprising Steve Cornwell, who expected at least a day of deliberation. After 90 tense minutes, the judge returned with a strong statement denouncing violence against women and advocating for equal rights. She found Orlando guilty of femicide, stating he disposed of Haley because he couldn't accept her self-control. Karen Anderson expressed mixed feelings about the verdict, noting it didn't bring Haley back but allowed them to close that chapter and start healing. She was given another opportunity to address the court, this time speaking directly to Orlando, hoping he would receive the maximum sentence. 2 weeks later, Orlando Tercero was sentenced. Judge Betancourt said Tercero had taken it upon himself to punish Haley for rejecting him and sentenced him to the maximum of 30 years in prison. Karen was overjoyed with the outcome and impressed by the cooperation between countries and the passion of the prosecuting attorney. Steve Cornwell expressed deep gratitude to the Nicaraguan authorities, prosecutor, and court system for their handling of the case. However, Orlando's friends found the 30-year sentence hard to accept. Some have received phone calls and letters from Orlando since his conviction, including Ashley Lopez. The story concludes with contrasting reactions to the verdict and sentence, highlighting the complex emotions surrounding the case's resolution. Orlando Tercero's friends continue to support him after his conviction. Ashley Lopez mentioned that Orlando's faith in God has grown, and he often asks for prayers. Some friends, like Estefany Maroney, still believe in his innocence, feeling that something is missing from the case. An anonymous high school friend of Orlando suspects there might be truth to the defense's claim that he wasn't in his right mind when Haley was killed. She speculated about the possible influence of alcohol or drugs, but acknowledged that nothing could justify murder. She expressed uncertainty about what really happened in that room. Orlando's defense is still focusing on his state of mind at the time of the murder. His attorney wants a new psychiatrist to examine the case, raising questions about whether an appeals court would allow it, and if there's a chance Orlando could be set free. Steve Cornwell, however, firmly believes Orlando is a killer who would likely kill again if ever released. On February 4, 2020, Orlando Tercero appeared in a Nicaraguan courtroom to appeal his conviction before a panel of 3 magistrates. His attorney, Eduardo Ruby, continued to argue that Tercero was highly intoxicated and temporarily insane during the murder, requesting a new psychiatric evaluation by a forensic psychiatrist experienced in temporary insanity defenses. Josie Arton, Haley's friend, finds it hard to believe that Orlando, as a nursing student, wouldn't recognize he was killing someone, regardless of his state. Karen Anderson, Haley's mother, expressed her disbelief and horror at the intimate and brutal nature of the strangulation, contrasting it with other forms of killing and emphasizing its raw and sad nature. The story concludes with these differing perspectives on Orlando's actions and the ongoing legal proceedings, highlighting the complex emotions and opinions surrounding the case. Orlando Tercero's attorney Ruby argued that Orlando was wrongly charged with femicide and sentenced to 30 years. He contended that in the U.S., Orlando would have been charged with second-degree murder, likely facing a lighter sentence with the possibility of parole. Ruby insisted that Nicaraguan courts were legally obligated to follow these guidelines. Surprisingly, the magistrates immediately rejected the request for a second psychiatric opinion. However, they needed time to deliberate on the question of modifying Tercero's sentence. 3 weeks later, 48 Hours visited Karen Anderson in New York, where she was still awaiting the Nicaraguan court's decision. They met in what used to be Haley's bedroom, now a sanctuary for her ashes. Karen explained that she wanted to keep Haley with her. Karen expressed her desire for the interview to honor Haley by bringing attention to femicide in the United States, which she believes is on the rise. She wished for a femicide law in the U.S. and emphasized the importance of taking red flags seriously to prevent similar tragedies. On March 10, 2020, almost 2 years to the day of Haley's murder, Karen and Gordon Anderson were at the Broome County DA's office to hear the appellate court's decision. This moment marked another significant point in their journey for justice for their daughter. The story concludes with this tense moment of anticipation, highlighting the ongoing impact of Haley's death on her family and their continued pursuit of justice. On March 10, 2020, Karen and Gordon Anderson attended a hearing at the Broome County DA's office to hear the appellate court's decision regarding Orlando Tercero's appeal. The hearing lasted over an hour, as an officer read the 12-page decision. Eventually, Karen Anderson realized that the appeal had been completely denied. Karen expressed her appreciation for the work done to convict Orlando to the fullest extent of the law. Orlando Tercero's conviction and 30-year sentence were upheld. He would likely spend the next 3 decades in Nicaragua's main penitentiary, known for its overcrowding and limited food provisions. Steve Cornwell, the Broome County DA, stated that if Tercero were ever freed and attempted to enter American soil, Broome County would arrest him and put him on trial again, as there would be no double jeopardy. As Haley's family and friends continued to heal, they remained determined to keep her memory alive. Jesse Bua, Orlando's former roommate, emphasized how Haley had touched many lives in her short time. Josie Artin recalled Haley's innocence and happiness, while Sidney Matuzak remembered her kindness, generosity, and hard work. When asked how she wanted Haley to be remembered, Karen Anderson described her as the millennial hippie, quirky, happy, and trusting. Despite the tragedy, Karen maintained that trust is a good quality and that people should trust others. The story concludes with these poignant memories of Haley, highlighting her positive impact on those around her and her mother's desire to preserve the essence of who Haley was, even in the face of the tragic circumstances of her death.